Welcome back to another North Carolina Tar Heels basketball recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of basketball recruiting, longtime college AAU and high school coach, Mr. David Sisk. And you're going to see a lot more of David coming up here pretty soon because basketball is about to hit the ground running. We got an exhibition game in less than a month, in 3 weeks. The Tar Heels go to Memphis, so we will see them in action then. And David will be on fairly regularly to talk about the Tar Heels. We're doing this podcast because there is breaking news. Derek Dixon, a 6'4" shooting guard who attends Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C., has committed to North Carolina very quickly. He had a great list, great offer sheet. Few of the schools: Arizona, Virginia, Syracuse, Villanova. He's a Washington, D.C. area kid. Gonzaga plays in the Catholic Conference there, which is arguably the best high school basketball conference in America. There's a lot of committed programs up there that I'm very familiar with. I'm very familiar with Gonzaga as well. Fantastic academic school, very disciplined school. They got good football. David, it looks like the Tar Heels got themselves a nice, well-rounded pickup here.
Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it. Very polished player, a winner. Does a lot of things well. I just think just a solid player. I was told by someone very close to that recruitment that Hubert Davis went about recruiting him in a way that you would recruit a top 10, top 20 kid. And I know Rick Barnes, I heard him say one time that he didn't pay attention to rankings. The only rankings he believed in was the RBR, the Rick Barnes ranking. So I think I agree with that on college coaches. Hubert Davis knows players. His staff they know players, and they know what they want. So, they're not going to look at rivals or any other group and look at rankings and say, well, we don't want this guy because he's ranked down here. And by the way, Derek has made a big jump of late. Rivals came out with our new rankings Tuesday, but he knows what he wants. And I think this is a guy that the coaching staff and Hubert Davis feel like probably if they did give any credence to rankings that they think was really underrated. So a guy kind of under the radar, but I believe the way you said it, just a very solid, well-rounded player is a good way to put it.
When I watched this film earlier today, and I checked a little bit out this summer, but I watched it earlier today and when we were going to record this tonight, and we're doing this in advance, obviously, of the commitment on Friday. I like seeing a guy's film that the third clip is not them scoring. It's them feeding the ball to someone else to score. And you saw a lot of that with him. He plays with his head up. He kind of reminds me of a guy who's got some of the attributes Hubert had back in the day. Maybe Hubert saw some of himself in him. He's a good spot-up guy. He could take a dribble and shoot, but he gets rid of the ball. He knows how to come off a screen and get space. And I know that's at the prep level and in the AAU circuit, but those are instinctive things that he does well. He seems like he's got a very good feel out on the perimeter. Another thing is I saw him run a lot of curls. And I love the curl. If you got a guy that's big enough at 6'5" like he is, that can run a curl, catch and shoot, or distribute, you have someone that could do a lot of damage to teams. And I think that that's the kind of stuff Hubert wants to see more of in the future. And that's one of the reasons why they went after him so hard.
Well, curl opportunities are there because he can shoot.
Yeah.
So you say, why would that happen? Well, if you can shoot, the defender has to go over the top of the screen and chase. And if he does, the curl's what's open. Or that's the next read, depending on how the defense plays it. That's the next read. So I think the thing about him, and he is a shooting guard, by the way. We didn't mention that. He knows how to play basketball. And here's one thing. He played for Team Takeover and EYBL. And one thing I've always said about those guys, because Team Takeover is based out of Washington, D.C., they're going to get guys out of the DMV area. And you talked about the Washington, D.C. Catholic League, which is one of the most competitive basketball leagues, probably top 2 or 3 in the country. And what all those teams have, whether it be them, whether it be DeMatha, just all those in that area.
You got McNamara, O'Connell, Paul Six. You got St. John's.
Yeah.
Tons of great programs.
Yeah. And the thing about them is a lot of those team takeover guys, number one, I think takeover is usually one of the most well-coached teams year in and year out in all of AAU, no matter which U circuit they're on. So you look at them this year, they got all the way down into the finals and semifinals of EYBL, and everybody thought it was going to be the Night Riders with the Boozers and the Oakland Soldiers with A.J. DeVance and Tyron Stokes. They thought, and they were. Talent-wise, nobody should have been close. But you look up, there's 3 teams, 14-1 at the end of the spring. Team takeovers, one of them. They crashed the party, and then they keep it up at Peach Jam. They do that. They've won as many Peach Jams the last few years as anybody on the EYBL circuit, which is the top circuit. And then you get into that Washington Catholic League, and those guys are so well coached. And I've mentioned that to the high school coaches that we've covered out of Washington, D.C., the players, talking to the high school coaches, talking to the team takeover guys, and even the players. It's like, man, you guys just get the best coaching all year round of anybody in the country. So, he's talented, but like you said, he knows how to play, and he's a winner. So you talk about the success Gonzaga has, and then you just pile on the part of that you're playing on a team that lost 2 games all year in EYBL and playing 20 games. He knows how to win, and it's not playing some rural league somewhere where you're playing against 5'11" post players. He's playing against
the D1 kids all over
year in and year out. Day in and day out, he's playing against the top of the country, and he wins. If you take his AAU and high school winning percentages, it would be off the charts.
I would say if you look at the top 7 or 8 teams every year in that conference, I bet you the starting 5 all end up in D1 somewhere. It's very, very good. And even the lower end programs like Ireton still send a few kids to D1 every year. He's number 44 in the class nationally, 2025, and he's number 12 at his position. Number 44, I know some people were concerned about his ranking a while ago when this started to heat up a lot. Ain't nothing wrong with number 44, especially a guy who is ascending, like you noted earlier.
Yeah, and I tell you what, another big deal in that, too, he's not going to be one and done.
Yeah.
So you've got a guy that is about development. So, if you get one of these guys, if you go back and look, R.J. Davis is some of those guys, kind of similar, and they've hung around. And, North Carolina fans can tell you about guys that hang around for 4 or 5 years, what kind of success that breeds and what kind of players you have. So, he's a guy that could be there. You can say, is there a downside? And I'm not being Debbie Downer here, but, in today's day and age where you hit the guys so many times hit the transfer portal, there were a couple of guys. You go back into the class, Seth Trimble's group with Tyler Nickel and Jalen Washington and some of those guys. And, you had guys leave out. And then, the year before that, you had 2 players out of the state of North Carolina, and they both, neither one of them stayed. So there have been players that have exited. But the issue, I think, with that was you had crowded backcourts, and Hubert basically had an iron 5 in all those situations that he stuck with.
Yeah.
In talking with all these guards, and I've interviewed Derek a couple of times and all these other guards that they've recruited, the deal with North Carolina is they know that RJ's going to be gone. Elliot Cadeau wants to be 2 and done. So, there's just going to be there's going to be room and there's going to be availability in the backcourt and an opportunity to play. And that's something that Hubert Davis and the coaching staff have sold on the recruiting trail. So, the opportunity is definitely there.
Yeah, and in addition to the well-roundedness and the savvy and some of those qualities that Dixon would bring to North Carolina, one thing that stands out, and you've talked about this, especially in the last couple of years when Hubert's starting to fill the roster with his guys, he wants shooters. He was a guy who understands the value of putting the ball in the basket because he was paid to do it for 12 years. And Roy Williams used to love talking about Hubert's the number 3 all-time leading three-point shooter in NBA history. I don't know where he is now, but he's close. If he's not there, he understands the value of putting the ball in the basket. You can erase a bad possession with a dude that can shoot. And that's one of the reasons that Dixon was so heavily coveted by Carolina, because he can shoot. But he's got those other little things that I like about his game, which I think will make him a better shooter down the road, David.
Yeah, and we've spoken about this before on here. 2 years ago, when North Carolina had a woeful team, the thing that I've really liked about Hubert Davis is he's not lived out the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And we talked about it then. He had a team there that couldn't throw it in the ocean, and they looked like they were about as accurate as Will Levis, if you've watched the Titans. So, I mean, they couldn't shoot at all. They could, and it killed. It really hurt. And he said, "I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to go out and get guys that can shoot the basketball." You look going into the transfer portal. You go out and you get Carmack Ryan and guys like that he already had last year. That could make outside shots. So, that's the case now. You look at him in the portal. He wants to bring guys in that can shoot. You look what he's recruiting. He wants to bring in guys that can shoot. So, and like you said, he's not a one-trick pony. These other things that he does. But I'll say this. I mean, I think if you have a guard who struggles from the perimeter, is really not a threat to make any shots, I believe Hubert's just going to be like, "No, I'm going to pass on this one."
Yeah. Well, finally they got one in this class, and that's been.
Let me say this too. It brings some momentum, and I think that's huge right now that you have to have that, because if you've got guys coming in, you don't want to. Well, why can't they get a player? Why can't they get a recruit? I think that's huge. Was guys coming in, you want to feel like there's something working there, and there's some momentum, and there's some buzz. When a guy steps on campus. I think they've got a big visitor this week, too, in Isaiah Dennis. Will be coming in, who I think is maybe the next likely commit. I've been told that North Carolina is in a really good – there's about 3 teams that are in the lead there. North Carolina is one of them. And if North Carolina has a really good visit with him and impresses him, I'm curious if he takes some of these later visits, or if he just says, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and do it." So, you look at Dennis, you say, okay, you've got a shooting guard in Derek Dixon. Now you've got Dennis as a point guard. You can kind of put those guys together. They kind of fit. And so you can say, "Hey, yeah, we got some momentum. Look, we got to do it here." And then, it's somebody that kind of fits into, what you can do.
Derek Dixon, 6'5", 195 pounds is what he's listed at right now, according to the Rivals bio. He attends Gonzaga in Washington, D.C., a great conference. If you're in that area, go check them out this season. They play a lot of double headers in that league, too, like at American University and George Washington. So they play in some pretty cool environments. So go to one of those games, see how he plays in one of those environments. For David Sisk, I'm AJ. We appreciate you stopping by.